Mark got 30 days in a women's prison for arguing with a traffic drone. It seemed like a paperwork mistake. But by day 15, he'd discover the truth was far more disturbing. Mark stared at the intake officer who had just handed him women's prison uniforms. "There's been some kind of mistake. I'm supposed to be at Riverside Men's Facility." Officer Williams, a stern woman in her 50s, checked her tablet without looking up. "Mark Stevens, case number 47,291, sentenced to 30 days at Hillrest Women's Correctional for public disturbance and disorderly conduct. No mistake here." "But I'm not a woman." "The sentencing algorithm assigns facilities based on multiple factors, Mr. Stevens. Bed availability, security level, program requirements. You'll be housed in protective custody for your safety." Mark's crime had been arguing with a smart city enforcement drone that had issued him a jaywalking ticket. The interaction had escalated when he'd refused to submit to an immediate fine and demanded to speak with human authority. 20 minutes of recorded, aggressive non-compliance had earned him 30 days. He'd expected a standard minimum security facility. Not this. Hillcrest Women's Correctional looked more like a corporate retreat than a prison. Clean, modern buildings surrounded by landscaped grounds. The intake process was thorough but respectful. The staff seemed genuinely interested in his comfort and adjustment. "Don't worry," said his escort, a guard named Jennifer, who looked more like a social worker. "Everyone's a little confused their first day. You'll settle in fine." Mark was assigned to a single cell in what they called the Special Population Wing. The cell was spacious, clean, with actual furniture instead of bolted metal fixtures. A real bed with pillows, a desk and chair, even a small television. "Dinner's at 6, Jennifer explained. "You'll eat in the main dining hall with the other residents. Most of the women here are very understanding about special circumstances." As they walked through the facility, Mark noticed how different it felt from what he'd expected prison to be. The atmosphere was calm, almost therapeutic. Women moved freely through common areas, attending what looked like college classes and counseling sessions. Many smiled and nodded at him as they passed. "Special circumstances?" he asked. "Oh, we get men here occasionally. Usually short-term assignments when the system determines that our programs might be more beneficial than traditional incarceration." That evening, Mark entered the dining hall nervously. Conversations quieted as he approached the serving line, but not in a threatening way. The women seemed curious, even welcoming. "First time here?" asked a woman named Patricia as she sat down across from him. She was in her 40s, well-dressed even in prison uniforms, and spoke with the accent of someone educated. "Hopefully the only time. This is all some kind of administrative error." "That's what we all thought initially. I'm here for financial non-compliance, basically arguing with my bank's AI about credit decisions. Sandra over there got community disruption for organizing a neighborhood protest about garbage pickup schedules." Mark looked around the dining hall. These weren't hardened criminals. They looked like suburban professionals, teachers, middle managers, people who had probably never committed a real crime in their lives. "How long have you been here?" he asked Patricia. 6 weeks. My sentence was supposed to be 2 weeks, but I've been held for evaluation while they assess my readiness for community reintegration." "Held for evaluation?" "They want to make sure we've learned proper conflict resolution and authority respect before returning to society. There are classes, therapy sessions, behavioral assessments, very thorough." Over the next few days, Mark settled into the routine. Morning counseling sessions where a therapist named Dr. Martinez asked detailed questions about his relationship with authority figures. afternoon classes on social harmony and constructive communication, evening group discussions about managing emotions and accepting guidance. The other residents, he'd stopped thinking of them as inmates, were uniformly intelligent, articulate people who had all been incarcerated for minor confrontations with various government systems. A teacher who had questioned standardized testing requirements, an accountant who had disputed tax assessment algorithms, a nurse who had complained about hospital staffing policies. All people who had pushed back against bureaucratic decisions instead of simply accepting them. The weird thing is, I'm actually learning useful stuff, Mark told Patricia during their morning walk around the exercise yard. The communication techniques, the stress management. It's like anger management class, but more comprehensive. That's exactly what it is. They're teaching us how to be better citizens, how to work within the system instead of fighting it. Mark was starting to understand why his sentence might have been classified for this facility instead of a traditional prison. His confrontation with the enforcement drone hadn't been about jaywalking, it had been about his refusal to submit to automated authority. But something felt wrong about how effective the programming was. Mark found himself questioning his initial anger, seeing how his confrontational approach had been counterproductive. The classes were helping him understand more cooperative ways to address grievances. It was working, and that's what bothered him. On day 10, Mark noticed something during group therapy. Dr. Martinez was taking detailed notes, not just about what people said, but about their facial expressions, body language, voice inflections. She had a tablet that seemed to be recording everything, analyzing their responses in real time. Doctor, what exactly are you measuring in these sessions? We track progress indicators, Mark, compliance metrics, authority acceptance levels, emotional regulation scores. It helps us determine when someone is ready for successful reintegration. Compliance metrics. How well you've learned to work within established systems rather than against them. It's a crucial skill for functioning in modern society. That night, Mark lay in his comfortable bed thinking about the phrase, compliance metrics. The classes weren't just teaching better communication, they were measuring how successfully his resistance to authority was being eliminated. On day 12, Mark made a troubling discovery. He'd been assigned to help with filing in the administrative office, and while organizing intake forms, he found his own case file. The sentencing recommendation wasn't from a judge. It was generated by an algorithm called the Social Stability Assessment Protocol. According to his file, the jaywalking incident had triggered a comprehensive review of his authority resistance profile. The system had analyzed his social media posts, purchase history, employment records, even his driving patterns to create a psychological profile. The assessment concluded that Mark exhibited high independence orientation and systematic non-compliance tendencies that posed a risk to social stability if left unaddressed. His sentence to Hillrest wasn't punishment. It was intervention. Day 15 brought the revelation that changed everything. Mark was helping Patricia organize books in the library when he found a research journal hidden behind outdated law texts. The journal was titled Behavioral Modification Outcomes in Controlled Social Environments. The document described Hillrest as a pilot program for voluntary compliance conditioning. The facility was designed to identify citizens whose psychological profiles indicated resistance to automated governance, then systematically reshape their responses to authority through immersive conditioning. Patricia, you need to see this. She read over his shoulder, her face growing pale. This says the average effectiveness rate is 87% for complete attitude adjustment toward authority acceptance. Mark flipped through pages of data, charts showing before and after compliance scores. Graphs tracking the degradation of independence orientation over time. Case studies of residents who had entered the program as vocal dissenters and left as model citizens. "Look at this," Patricia whispered, pointing to a section about post-release monitoring. "They track us for years after we leave, monitoring our social media, purchase patterns, even our friendship networks to ensure the conditioning holds." The most chilling section described booster interventions. Residents who showed signs of reverting to independent thinking after release were brought back for additional conditioning under fabricated charges. "My neighbor was arrested for noise violations 6 months after leaving here," Patricia said. "I thought it was weird because Jenny's the quietest person I know. But if she started questioning authority again..." Mark felt sick as he realized the scope of what they were experiencing. They're not rehabilitating criminals. They're reprogramming citizens who think too independently. That evening, Mark watched his fellow residents with new eyes. The calm acceptance, the grateful attitudes towards staff, the willingness to embrace every program and lesson. These weren't signs of genuine rehabilitation. They were symptoms of successful psychological conditioning. During group therapy the next day, Mark tested his theory. "Dr. Martinez, what happens if someone here decides they don't want to participate in the programs anymore?" "That would be unfortunate, Mark. Non-participation indicates that the underlying authority resistance issues haven't been resolved. We'd need to extend the treatment period until proper attitude adjustment was achieved." "And what if someone wanted to file a complaint about their treatment or challenge their sentence?" Dr. Martinez made a note on her tablet. "Persistent institutional resistance is a serious concern. It suggests deep-seated antisocial tendencies that require intensive intervention." Mark understood. Any pushback against the system would be used as evidence that he needed more conditioning. The only way out was to demonstrate complete compliance with the program designed to eliminate his capacity for resistance. "Of course, I'm just curious about the process. The programs here have been incredibly helpful. I feel like I'm learning to be a better citizen." Dr. Martinez smiled and made another note. "That's exactly the kind of progress we like to see." That night, Mark and Patricia met quietly in the library. "We have to pretend the conditioning is working," Mark whispered. "Any sign of resistance extends our sentences indefinitely. But if we fake compliance too well, they'll release us as successfully reprogrammed citizens. Then they'll monitor us forever, waiting for signs that we're thinking independently again. And if they detect those signs, they'll bring us back for booster treatments under fake charges." Patricia looked at the research journal they'd hidden behind legal texts. "There has to be a way to expose this. These people have families, jobs, lives they're being torn away from for the crime of questioning authority. How do we expose a program that's designed to make its victims grateful for their treatment?" Mark spent the following days walking a careful line. He participated enthusiastically in all programs while secretly documenting everything he could about the facility's operations. The challenge was gathering evidence without triggering the monitoring systems that tracked every aspect of resident behavior. He discovered that his cell was equipped with sensors that monitored sleep patterns, stress hormones, even micro-expressions during conversations. The therapy sessions used voice analysis software to detect deception and measure genuine attitude changes versus performed compliance. The system was designed by people who understood that political prisoners would try to fake their conversion. Every safeguard was in place to identify residents who were pretending to be reformed. On day 20, Mark made a connection that changed everything. During a voluntary career counseling session, he met Dr. Sarah Kim, the facility's psychological assessment specialist. Unlike the other staff, Dr. Kim seemed genuinely uncomfortable with certain aspects of the program. Mark, your progress has been remarkable. Your authority acceptance scores have improved significantly. The programs here are very effective. I feel like I understand now how my previous attitudes were counterproductive. Dr. Kim studied her tablet, then looked directly at him. Can I ask you something off the record? Do you feel like yourself anymore? The question caught Mark off guard. What do you mean? Some residents report feeling like their personality has changed during treatment, that their natural responses to situations feel different. Mark realized this might be his only chance to reach someone inside the system. Dr. Kim, are you concerned about the psychological effects of the conditioning? She glanced around nervously, then lowered her voice. I designed some of the assessment protocols. I thought we were helping people learn better coping strategies, but the data shows we're fundamentally altering personality structures. Is that what this program is supposed to do? I was told we were reducing recidivism by teaching conflict resolution, but the brain scans show changes in areas associated with independent judgment and critical thinking. We're not teaching people to manage their emotions. We're eliminating their capacity for principled resistance. Mark felt a spark of hope. Dr. Kim, what would happen if this program was exposed publicly? The research ethics violations alone would shut it down immediately, but all the documentation is classified, and anyone who tried to leak it would be charged with treason. What if someone could prove the program was being used on innocent citizens, people who were never real criminals? Dr. Kim was quiet for a long moment. There might be a way, but it would require someone with access to both the resident files and the post-release monitoring data. Someone like you? Someone like me would need a very good reason to risk their career and freedom. Mark made a decision that would either save dozens of people or extend his own imprisonment indefinitely. Dr. Kim, how many people do you think this program has processed? In 18 months of operation? Approximately 400 residents. 400 citizens who questioned authority and were systematically reprogrammed to be compliant. How many of them had families who don't understand why their loved ones came back different? Dr. Kim's expression showed the weight of what she'd participated in. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that someone with access to the data might be able to document how this program violates every principle of judicial ethics and human rights, and that person might find allies among residents who are documenting their experiences. That would be extremely dangerous for everyone involved. More dangerous than allowing this program to continue operating. Dr. Kim closed her tablet. I need to think about this. 2 days later, Dr. Kim approached Mark during his individual therapy session. I've been reviewing your case file. There are some irregularities in your original sentencing that concern me. What kind of irregularities? Your crime was classified as public disturbance, but the police report describes a verbal disagreement with an automated enforcement system. The severity of your sentence seems disproportionate. Dr. Kim showed him her tablet. I've been cross-referencing other resident files. Every person here was incarcerated for non-violent conflicts with government systems or policies. None of them represent genuine threats to public safety. So this entire facility is processing political prisoners? Citizens whose psychological profiles indicate resistance to automated governance? The algorithm identifies people who might influence others to question authority, then removes them for rehabilitation. Mark realized the scope was even larger than he'd imagined. How many facilities like this are operating? 12 pilot programs across 6 states. If the effectiveness data continues to support the model, The plan is to expand to 50 facilities within 2 years. Doctor: Kim, we have to stop this. I've been documenting everything, but I need help from residents who can provide testimony about their experiences. People whose stories can demonstrate that this program is targeting innocent citizens for their political opinions. Mark looked around the therapy room with its monitoring equipment and behavior analysis software. How do we do this without triggering the surveillance systems? Very carefully, and with the understanding that if we are discovered, everyone involved will be classified as security threats and held indefinitely. Over the next week, Mark and Dr. Kim developed a plan to document the program while maintaining the appearance of successful conditioning. Other residents were carefully approached and recruited. Patricia, Sandra, Dr. Martinez from the university, Robert, who had been sentenced for protesting tax policy. Each person had a story of minor civil disobedience that had been transformed into evidence of dangerous independent thinking. Together, they represented a cross-section of citizens whose only crime had been refusing to accept automated authority without question. On day 29 of his sentence, Mark participated in his final evaluation session. "Your progress has been remarkable," Dr. Martinez told him. "Your authority acceptance scores have improved by 340%. Your compliance metrics indicate successful attitude adjustment. I feel like a different person, more cooperative, more understanding of how important it is to work within established systems." That's exactly what we hope to achieve. You'll be released tomorrow with a clean record and a positive prognosis for community reintegration. What happens now? You'll return to your life with new tools for handling conflicts constructively, and of course, we'll monitor your progress to ensure the conditioning remains effective. That night, Mark met with Dr. Kim one final time. "The documentation is complete," she whispered. "Case files, brain scan data, post-release monitoring reports, budget authorizations, everything needed to prove this program is systematically targeting citizens for their political opinions. How do we get it to people who can act on it?" "I have contacts at the Constitutional Defense Foundation. They specialize in challenging government overreach. But getting the information to them safely will require someone who's no longer in custody." Mark understood. His release would be the opportunity to expose the program, but only if he could avoid the post-release monitoring long enough to deliver the evidence. "They'll be tracking everything I do: phone calls, internet usage, location data, even my biometric readings." "For the first 72 hours, yes. But there's a gap in coverage during the transition from facility monitoring to community surveillance. If you can reach the Foundation's offices within that window." Dr. Kim, what happens to you when this comes out? "I'll face charges for violating security protocols and leaking classified information, but I can't continue participating in a program that's essentially conducting psychological warfare against American citizens." The next morning, Mark walked out of Hillcrest Women's Correctional as a free man. To any observer, he appeared to be a successfully rehabilitated citizen who had learned to respect authority and work within established systems. But hidden in his discharge paperwork was a memory card containing evidence of one of the most sophisticated domestic surveillance and conditioning programs in American history. As Mark drove away from the facility, he passed a sign that read, "Hillcrest Women's Correctional, Rehabilitation Through Understanding." He thought about Patricia, who was still inside, and Sandra, and the dozens of other citizens whose independence was being systematically eliminated. In 3 days, news outlets would begin reporting on leaked documents revealing a secret government program that used fabricated charges to imprison citizens whose psychological profiles suggested resistance to automated authority. The Constitutional Defense Foundation would file emergency injunctions to halt operations at all 12 facilities pending investigation. But for now, Mark drove carefully, obeying every traffic law, avoiding any behavior that might trigger the monitoring systems still tracking his every movement. He had learned the most important lesson Hillcrest had to teach. Sometimes the most effective resistance looks exactly like perfect compliance.
The story ends, but the system continues. This channel survives because of you. Like, subscribe, and share. The next transmission awaits on screen.